So next I'd like to tell you an overview of the game, just so you have an idea. What is this game? What does it look like? I am going to be reading from a teleprompter, mainly so I can stay focused. So the first point I want to bring up is that this is a form of a classroom management tool that I use throughout the whole year, and it does incorporate real world skills within it. I think it's very important when we're teaching our students any lesson that we do connect it to the real world, because I think when students can see that it has more meaning than the skills that they're picking up, and they can connect it to real life learning, I think that's when students become more engaged. So the next point I'd like to bring up is that within the game, students learn to write a resume, apply for and perform a variety of jobs and roles within the classroom. They budget and they calculate their pay and learn about conflict resolution, all while building a sense of community within the classroom. For me, and I think most people, we can see that when we have community, a strong sense of community in our classrooms, that's when the students are more engaged, and that's when we work well together as a community. Another key point about the game is that it offers a lot of opportunity for leadership, as well as teaching students to become accountable for their actions through a variety of fines and bonuses the class agrees on before the game begins. So what's really important about this is you do want to have the students approve that list of fines and bonuses, because that's your buy-in. If they don't agree with a fine that they could possibly get, that's when they're going to shut down and not want to play the game. And that's when they're less engaged. It is important to have those conversations because you want the students to be a part of the implementation of the game. I can't stress it enough, you have to go at the pace of your students. I am constantly repeating, oh, this could be a fine once the game starts. You're teaching the game and implementing it for the first 4 to 5 weeks of school. In that time, it's very important to remind the students, oh, that would be a littering fine. You've dropped your jacket on the ground again, or your lunch kit is still on the table. You don't want to be giving fines right away. And even once the police officers are hired, you want them to be giving students warning until everyone feels comfortable. So that is a key part of the game. You can't just rush everything. You need to incorporate it like you would any other method in your classroom. Along the way, the expectations do increase like we do with anything else, even as parents. So it is important to continue to increase the expectations by being more strict with the fines. By January, which is term 2, that's when I'm quite firm with the fines and bonuses. They've had enough warnings, they've had enough chances, they've got a good understanding of how the game works. And then the other thing too is students want clear expectations. We already know our students who push boundaries, they're doing it to see where's your line. So if we don't have a line that is clear for students to know where our boundary is with them, then they're going to keep pushing, and that's where you get consistent behavior from students. I find with the city game, because there are clear expectations, and as long as you're consistent with your rules within the game, and you hold the students accountable, but you're fair, it works. I find I have a lot of students who every year their behavior gets reduced, and I believe that the game gives students a clear image or picture of what they're supposed to be doing in order to reach their own goals. So the next point I want to touch on is trial and error. When you can give students a safe place to practice trial and error, push those boundaries that they want to push, we know all of our students come from different experiences. We're not going to know them all. So you want to allow them to have a safe place to push that boundary, but let them know, no, this is the line, or maybe wait, we're going to adapt. So the game, in all my years of teaching it, I always adapt for students. For example, if a student's not completing their planner, I have had students where they have trouble scribing. So I've had students take a photo of the board and then they just bring that home and show their parents. As long as they're getting their work done, then it shouldn't be a fine. I've had a parent, a guardian, who would not sign their child's planner. So you wouldn't penalize that student because someone else won't do something that would give them money. So there's a lot of times where you say, don't worry about it, just keep doing your job and you will receive bonuses for those from your planner checkers, for example. You're always adapting the game for each student. And I guess the best way to think of it is, how do we want to be treated in our workplace today? We want the students to feel they still have the same voice we do as adults. The next point I'd like to talk about is the curriculum. A lot of people ask, if you're playing this game the whole year and it's taking 5 weeks to implement it, when are you teaching the curriculum? Very fair question. It does take a lot of work to implement the game, but you need to keep in mind that the curriculum is integrated within the game. So for example, when the kids are writing resumes, right off the bat, you know how students lay out their work, you know their penmanship, you know their spelling, you know how involved the parents are getting. A lot of parents will show them their resumes and work with them on theirs, others won't. But it tells you a lot about the kids as well. What are their strengths? What are their stretches? How involved do they get into their community? And so the resume is actually that piece that we all do as teachers, is getting to know our students. Tell me about yourself. So obviously the banking and stuff, that's your math part of your curriculum. And what's very cool about that is when you go into teaching decimals, if you are teaching your students decimals that year, that goes within a week or two and you're already done that unit because of all the banking they've done throughout the year. So there's a lot of different categories touched on within the game. Even when you get into creating their city posters, we do research on the science or social studies that we are learning about. So yes, the curriculum is in there. Now, I think what's important to bring up here is, for myself, when you enter into the classroom, you're not implementing every subject right away. The first thing we need to know is we need to learn the child as a whole. We need to learn how their learning is, how they work. We need to understand them first before we can even reach them on an academic level. So this game allows you to have that platform. The other thing that I think is often stressful for maybe newer teachers is usually in the summer, the end of August is coming and people are getting stressed. Oh my gosh, I've got to put together a bunch of lesson plans and figure out what am I going to teach and what should I start with? I need to meet with other teachers to figure out what they're doing. I don't get that stress at the start of the year because I'm starting with the city game. When I'm not teaching in the classroom, yes, after school, that's when I'm beginning to plan my lessons that I'm going to begin to incorporate in the 3rd and 4th week of school. So for example, I might start science in the 3rd week, socials in the 4th, but I've already been doing writing, we've already been doing speaking, we've already been doing ADST, career planning, and we've also been doing math. So the curriculum is there and in a form that is engaging for the students. The next point I'd like to talk about is how much time this takes. Again, I have said roughly 5 weeks, but I think it's important to know that the time you take in the first 5 weeks of school, it is a lot. I'm not gonna lie, every single September I tell people I'm a write-off because that first 5 weeks is where you're implementing the game, you're getting to know your kids, and then once they understand the game, you can step back and it truly does run itself. The kids take over. I personally do first aid for the school, so I often get asked to leave my classroom to go take care of something, especially in the fall and the spring when the kids are outside a lot. And I can leave my classroom and the kids will continue with whatever I'm doing, and including running lessons and teaching lessons. So the other thing that, some other benefits that have come out of it is TOCs. When you have a TOC show up in your classroom, the kids all know their roles, and I've had many TOCs leave me a note going, what is this game? I didn't have to do very much. The kids told me everything what to do. I didn't have to do planners because there's a planner person that runs the board. I didn't have to mediate between students because the police officers do. I didn't have to run the city council meeting because the deputy mayors do. I didn't have any planners to sign today because the planner checkers sign them. I didn't have to clean the classroom at the end of the day because there's librarians and all sorts of things, and TOCs really appreciate walking into that. Custodians always make comments. They're like, you always have one of the cleanest classrooms in the school. Thank you. And I do think it's important because they do have a lot on their plate. I guess what's most important here is to let you know that the game allows the teacher to step back from all the chaos, because it is a lot of work teaching. We know this. You get in tunnel vision and one kid asks a question, another, and you're constantly making, putting out fires and answering questions. And what I feel is that the students really step up and they help out. And it's not just the teacher, and it makes it feel like it's more student-centered versus teacher-centered. So what it allows me to do is to step back, observe more of what's going on, and approach situations in a different way. To end off with, I think in general, if you take a look at maybe our childhood in the classroom, and you sit down, you complete the work, you might take it home, you bring it back, and it's on repeat. In my classroom, what I love is the amount of conversations that go on and hearing what the students have to say, hearing what their needs are. Yes, they negotiate a lot with me, and I encourage that and I love that. But I truly believe that we have a lot of positive energy and a lot of joking in our classroom because the kids feel that their voice is valuable and what they have to say is important to their peers as well. I encourage you to check out the game. I have created a few videos just to speak to each of the lessons. Again, there is the book here if you'd like to take a look, but the videos are there just to kind of give you the highlights of each lesson and to see if it's of interest to maybe you implementing some into your classroom. I would encourage you not to implement every single piece of it your first year. Just take small steps, and I do have a chapter in the book that says here's a mini version on how you might want to begin, just to get your mind wrapped around the purpose of the game and the big ideas of it. Thank you for listening.